the US Supreme Court, they've got a little light in front of someone who's presenting, and when that light goes on, Adele, you stop talking. I want to be less dogmatic. I don't want to talk about firearms per se. I think we've heard enough about firearms. I want to talk particularly to the Portfolio Committee because I want to talk solutions, people. But in order to get solutions, you have to identify what the problems are. I originally had done a presentation on the security industry. I think that's probably going to be moved to tomorrow. So I've been furiously making a few notes to make it look like I know what I'm going to say. And I indicated earlier that I was going to talk about the criminal justice system. And I think a number of elements of what makes up our society. And there's been a lot of discussion today about people who don't obey the law. And the obvious question is, why don't people obey the law? And I want to give some examples because I work in the criminal justice system. And I don't think there's anybody present today representing either the magistrates or judges, which is of concern, because if we're going to look for solutions, we need to know exactly what the problems are from every different perspective of the value chain, so to speak, so that we can identify where the flaws are and resources can be allocated to addressing those flaws. A police officer seeing an offence commissioned in his presence or her presence, and that results in an investigation. It may result in an arrest, and it may result after a prosecutor has examined the docket in a court appearance. That process, which should be simple, is extremely problematic. I want to congratulate General Satoli in particular because he very honestly made some comments earlier on about crime and about resources and about the abilities of the police. And I think at the outset, let me apologize to my colleagues in blue. You know, I always moan at you and I always say that you're the problem. Well, I'm going to do it again today. Investigated. We have a problem in our detective services. The detective services are under-resourced, they're overworked, they have literally hundreds of dockets. They're expected to investigate, prosecute, and present a case to court where they may not even have a motor vehicle to enable them to go and interview witnesses. And one of the flaws in the system is that it takes so long for a matter to come to court that witnesses give up. People who started off as willing complainants or willing witnesses become frustrated after repeated court appearances and postponements that they simply don't come. And they ignore subpoenas if they even subpoena the Tort Act and its regulations. Many prosecutors don't even know that there are regulations. And if they do have the legislation, they don't have amended or updated versions of the legislation. This piece of legislation is now facing its 5th major amendment without the 4th major amendment being promulgated. Only parts of the 2006 amendment have been promulgated. The majority of it has not been promulgated. So the end result is that prosecutors can't even make head or tail of the law. It's become very disjointed, very confusing, and it results in criminals getting off. And we do not want violent criminals in our society. We want them off the streets, in prison, where they are correctly punished and where they are either rehabilitated or they remain in jail. It's as simple as that. So the criminal justice system is not dealing effectively with firearm offenders. But the problem involves every single offender. There's ample evidence that suggests that the person starts off doing petty crime, often drug or alcohol related as a youth. They escalate to more serious crime over time if they are not caught and rehabilitated at an early stage. The Firearms Control Act, in terms of its actual implementation, is problematic. And I made a call earlier. I said, don't go and change anything until we've got the basics in place. And I want to reiterate that call. I'm going to give a couple of examples of how the Firearms Control Act has the Registrar of Firearms to issue a certificate confirming information on the database as correct. I have many matters, criminal matters, dealing with firearm prosecutions, and I've never seen such a certificate. And if I did, I would be able to prove that it's in all probability incorrect. The data is seriously flawed. And every day that goes by, that data becomes more and more corrupt, and the problem that we face gets bigger and bigger. We have to deal with basic data before we start changing anything. Data processing before we start changing anything. Data processing is a problem, and I echo Adele's call for the Commission of Inquiry details to be made public, because I know what is in that Commission of Inquiry findings, and it's nothing to do with dealers and it's nothing to do with trainers, it's all to do with systems and the police. A simple example would be, from a dealer's point of view, they have to submit details of their stock returns, which they faithfully do in terms of the Act every single week. And it's ignored. We've had this debate. Process the SAP 350s. And then a police officer comes with 10,000 firearms on a list and says, why don't you have these firearms? And the dealer says, well, I don't, because I've sold them, and if you process my information, you'd know that I don't have these firearms.